Welcome to everyone to Tales from the 90s, your retro time machine back to my favorite time period, the 1990s. This week we're going back to July 1991. I'm 7 years old, just finished first grade, it's summertime, and let's go.
Tales from the 90s never die. In our hearts they testify. VCRs and mixtape spins, where every tale begins. Tales from the crypt, marathons, wrestling wars and morning yawns. Play kickball in the street, man those days can't be beat. Tales from the 90s never die.
Alright guys, you probably see I'm always changing camera vantage points and stuff. Got the big board this week. Still experimenting what I want to do with this board. It says your ad here is a joke. If anybody would like to sponsor it, your ad, you would have the whole board if you want to. But you know, probably not anybody going to sponsor this. But anyway, you see July 1991. A few things we'll be talking about. The 1991 MLB All-Star Game. Of course, like, subscribe, and comment. You know, whatever you're watching this on Facebook, YouTube, or listen to us on Spotify. If you listen to us, you ain't seeing this board, so you don't care about that. But anyway, Nickelodeon, I almost wiped it off already. Anyway, WCW Great American Bash going on. So we got a lot to talk about this week. Well, speaking of that, we'll start with wrestling. WCW Great American Bash as a pay-per-view. Of course, this started in the 80s under the NWA, but this was a pay-per-view in WCW. This was one of the infamous ones. Lex Luger, this was July 14th, by the way. Lex Luger defeated Barry Windham in a steel cage match for the vacant world title. The fans were not happy. They were chanting, "We want Flair," because this is after Flair got fired by that idiot pizza boy, Jim Herd, that they put in charge of WCW at the time. He wanted Ric Flair to cut his hair short, which he did. He wanted him to put an earring in and call himself Spartacus. I mean, come on. Nature Boy Ric Flair, already a legend by this time. He was already a legend way before this. And they wanted him to change it. He's like, nope. He left and took the world title with him. Of course, he had been world champion since the NWA days. And back then, you had to put a $25,000 deposit down on the world title in order to get it. Which I know is seems kind of weird now, but you had to actually do that, and you get interest back. It was just a way for the NWA to ensure they were going to get the title back, because who knew what, you know, wrestlers were notorious sometimes for double-crossing promotions, so they wanted to make sure that if they took the title, they were going to get money. So Flair felt he was owed this because he had never, you know, he just kind of let the money sit since they made him champion constantly, because he was the only one they could trust with it long term and to draw money. So he wanted the money back. Herd said no, so he took the belt and ended up going to WWF with it. This night, Dusty Rhodes owned an old belt from Florida. They put a WCW nameplate on. But yeah, fans are not happy about this. And of course, Luger was the WCW US champion at the time and had to vacate the title. Of course, he turned heel this night and got Harley Race as his manager. But fans were not happy. Let's see. Also, on the main event for that, actually wasn't even the main event. Main event because they knew what was going to happen. The main event was Rick Steiner defeating Arn Anderson and Paul E. Dangerously in a handicap steel cage match. July 20th, about a week later, the World Tag Team Champions Steiner brothers were stripped of the titles because Scott Steiner had a biceps injury. And then 2 months later, the Enforcers, which were Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko, because of course Ric Flair gone, Arn Anderson had to have a new partner. They won the vacant titles at Clash of the Champions Fall Brawl. And then no WWF pay-per-view this month. Of course, this was before ECW. I think they were still like Tri-State Wrestling or whatever they were. But one other note of wrestling, July 7th, future WWF Hall of Famer, more famously known as Road Dogg Jesse James, he started his wrestling career, of course, from that famous Armstrong family. Bullet Bob, his dad, legend. He wrestled forever. And of course, his brothers, Brad and Scott, wrestled. I believe there might have been more, I can't remember. But Scott Armstrong is probably more famous for being a referee in WWF in the 2010s, and then Brad Armstrong is known as like being the best worker out of the whole family, and one that they said really should have gotten been a huge name, but he just never got the right break. But I mean, that's one of those tales of, you know, what could have been. Sorry. Moving on to TV. By the way, this video's coming out day after New Year's. Hope you guys had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's. You know, whatever you celebrate. Hope it was good. Hope you know, everybody got what they wanted, or, you know, had a nice time with their family. I know it's not part of this podcast, and you might be watching this in July going, Christmas? But it's kind of hard to do podcasts and do, you know, tell you when it's recorded, because you never know when people are going to watch these things. There's podcasts I'll be watching from 4 years ago. It'll be like, I'll be watching it in July, and it'll be, you know, November. It's like, oh, it's getting colder. It's like, yeah, right, it's burning up in here. But anyway, a few TV shows that were on the time. This was, of course, July, so a lot of the, you know, the regular TV series, their season had ended by July. But the Golden Girls were on NBC Saturday nights. They were showing reruns at this time. But they just finished their 6th season, and the next in September, a couple months after this, would start their final season. That show's legendary, of course. Betty White, probably the most famous one, but they were all famous. That show was just 4 crabby old women, and they all had their own personalities, and they were just, that's one of those shows that still gets talked about today, and people from, you know, this generation will pick up and laugh at it. So it's one of those things that's really stood the test of time. And of course, all 4 women are gone now, but I mean, they left huge legacies both with that show and other things they did. Speaking of Golden, not trying to do a segue there, but Stephen King's The Golden Years miniseries would air. It was a 7-part miniseries on CBS. I had never seen it until either last year or the year before, when I got a huge Stephen King collection. It had some of his movies and some of his series, like The Langoliers. I'll talk about that at some point. That was a good miniseries. But anyway, this is a 7-part miniseries, and a lot of people were mad about it. The basic plot of it is these old people, they're at this, like, there's like this radioactive stuff at this lab, and they start getting younger, and of course it's a government conspiracy, so they're trying to keep, you know, wraps on it, try to keep the I can't remember the main character, but, you know, they tried to keep him there, but he took off, and it was a huge thing. But I guess I don't know if it didn't get the ratings they wanted or anything, but CVS, yeah, it's at the pharmacy. These old people probably needed CVS, but CBS was there. It ended on a cliffhanger, and the thought of it, you know, it was supposed to lead into an actual series, you know, a weekly series, but CBS didn't pick it up. So Stephen King offered a counter. He's like, okay, give me 4 hours in primetime next spring, and we'll wrap it up. They didn't do it, so of course it left people pissed off because it didn't wrap up. The DVD version, they released it. I can't remember if it has the original version or the DVD version, but anyway, they kind of re-edited it to give it kind of an optimistic ending, but it's still one of those, didn't get to end, and it wasn't Stephen King's fault or the show's fault. It was, you know, they said they were going to get the series, and they didn't pick it up. Just one of many examples of network and cable channels, you know, not caring about the customers, the consumers, whatever you want to call them, viewers. Like, oh, it don't get us enough ratings, so screw everybody else that did watch it. Hate networks. That's why streaming is probably one of the better things, because, and even them, they cancel stuff. I told about the Santa Clarita Diet show on Netflix that they canceled after 3 seasons, left on a huge cliffhanger. Anyway, enough of that rant. One other show, Beverly Hills 90210, had just ended its 1st season. It was in reruns, but I talked about that a little bit before. It was one of those shows that later on, it got a reputation of being, oh, it's a raunchy teen show. But I've only seen, because I didn't watch it at the time, I wasn't allowed to, but I've seen recently, I think 1.5 seasons, and yeah, there's some content on there, you know, teens sleeping with each other, but they don't do it. It's not like this gratuitous thing that it was made out to be. And there's a lot of lessons and a lot of, you know, they weren't like saying go out and sleep with people. They were actually, you know, a lot of it was kind of almost saying to be abstinent and not, you know, do this and not do drugs, and showing the harms of it. But like I said, I don't know later on if it got a different. But it had a bad reputation by the time I'd even heard of it, and I'd put it up there with wholesome family shows. Like, I would say that they could have put that on TGIF. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it through today's eyes of the amount of raunchy stuff they put on TV, and they'll just freely allow the F word these days. When back then that would have gotten a show and a network thrown off the air. But of course, this would lead to other, like Melrose Place spun off of this, and then other teenage dramas towards the end of the decade. It would lead to like stuff like Seventh Heaven, which is known as a more wholesome one, even though we all know what the dad off that did. And if you don't look it up and don't look too deep into it, because it's disgusting. I don't know if he's still in prison or what, but he deserves to rot. Anyway, Dawson's Creek, Party of Five, those type of shows. Of course, Tales from the 90s. I'm going to be talking about the Crypt Keeper. And these are, we were in season 3 during this time. And these are some of the best episodes from the best, one of the best seasons of Tales from the Crypt. Episode number 6 started the month with Dead Weight. This one starred Whoopi Goldberg, and actually, at the end, the Crypt Keeper was like hosting like he was Johnny Carson hosting, and he had Whoopi Goldberg on there, and she threatened to kill him with a knife. It was hilarious. But the actual episode had her in it, too. This guy, Red, was trying to steal this pearl from like this plantation. There was like voodoo people, and Whoopi Goldberg ends up getting the best of him at the end. Another one that was really, really memorable for me is called The Reluctant Vampire. This is a lot of comedy in this one. It's about this vampire that works at a blood bank as a security guard, and you can tell by the title, Reluctant Vampire. He didn't want to kill people. That's why he worked there. He would steal the blood at night, and then the boss ended up catching him, and the boss was a prick anyway, and he killed the boss. But the secretary that worked for him, who he was trying to sleep with and forced to sleep with him, was like secretly in love with the vampire, and then ended up finding out that he was a vampire, and like they killed the prick that ran the place, and then she asked him to bite. His name was Mr. Longtooth. That didn't give it away, but asked him to bite her, and they both became vampire, or she became a vampire. It's like a love story, a comedy all in one, but with some horror in there too. That's Tales of the Crypt to sum it up right there. But another one that's memorable was called Easel Kill Ya. It's about this artist that's down on his luck, and he's a drunk, and he's trying to get sober for this girl he likes, and he ends up accidentally killing his landlord. Like, it was a complete accident at first, but then he like painted her like as an accident. That's the first thing you do. Call the cops or run. Oh, I'm gonna paint this woman. But anyway, this collector of like these grisly, horrible paintings finds out and starts commissioning him for these paintings, and he can't just paint a dead body. He has to go kill these people. At first they start as accidents, but the Tales from the Crypt twist at the end, his girlfriend finds out about some of the stuff, so she takes off, and I think she gets hit by a car or something like that. But she has to have an operation. And the only way to save her is for this surgeon to come in and do it. And I guess he don't take insurance, requires this huge fee. So he's got to go out and kill somebody like quickly to get the money. So he goes in the parking lot and finds this guy and kills him, and then goes and sells it to this collector. And the Tales from the Crypt twist ending is the guy he killed was the only surgeon that could save his girlfriend, and she dies. And of course they at the same time the police they found, because the guy left his paint stuff there. He's like, "Aren't you an artist?" And then it just fades, because you know what's going to happen to the guy. Undertaking Parlor, another fun one. This had kids in it. One of the kids was that I can't remember his name, but he was best friends with Eric for a while in Boy Meets World, and also best friends with Brendan on Step by Step, and became one of the main characters. I think he ended up getting with Dana. I don't know. I don't remember if they stay together. But anyway, he was one of the main kids in it. These kids have a camera, and they go to this funeral home where they find the funeral director talking with like the local pharmacist, and discover their plan is the pharmacist gives the wrong medicine and kills the guy, and then they get the funeral out of it. Well, One of the kids' dad ends up dying, so they end up hiding in there, and they end up getting the funeral home guy, in a Tales from the Crypt way. And then a final episode that would air in this month is called Morning Mess. I've only seen it a couple times. It's about this newspaper writer. He's investigating the murder of these homeless people, and there's this group that's supposed to be helping the homeless people, and their name spells out something. The acronym ends up spelling out ghouls, and he finds out why it's ghouls at the end. Turns out these people aren't so nice and not really trying to help the homeless people. But yeah, that's Tales from the Crypt. One of my favorite seasons and a few of my favorite episodes there. Look this show up on HBO. Oh my God, what am I talking about? Look this show up on HBO. It'll be on tomorrow, 1992. Look this show up on YouTube. You can find all the episodes there. I believe they're unedited even. I think they have edited versions, so if you got kids, watch out. Or do what I did and buy the DVD set off Amazon. It's super cheap. It's basic. It's not upscaled or whatever, but it doesn't matter. It gets you more in the mood if you watch it in the old ways anyway. Everything doesn't need to be 4K, blah, 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 blah. I don't come from the 4K time. I come from the tube TV time when the tube meant there's an actual tube in the TV, not YouTube. And, you were watching stuff, you're recording on the VCR, you were watching it on cable, or, turning the antenna to try to tune it in. But that's my time, the 90s, as if you couldn't tell. But, next memory I want to talk about, we're going to kind of not go into the fun territory. Just during this time, of course, how old was I? I can't remember. I was 7, and we were living at Granny's at this time. This wasn't the time I talked about last time in 1999 when I was skipping school. I wasn't skipping school in the 1st and 2nd grade. But we had lived in Kentucky prior to this. That's where Josh, I don't know if he was born there, but we'd moved there with Josh's dad. And that's one person I'm going to talk about. I talked about Marky Foe before. If you don't know, that's my stepdad. It's Clinton's actual dad, the guy we live with, and for better or for worse, he kind of shaped who I am. Learning what to do and what not to do. But this guy, Joe, was a couple of my brother's dads. I don't want to give names or anything, in case they don't want me to. I don't know if they have relationships with him or not. If they do, or, I don't want to say anything otherwise. I'm just giving my impressions of him, and he's not a very good man. He's not a very good, nice man. Unlike with Marky Foe, I was able to joke around with him a little bit on Facebook after I'd found him later on. And I can still joke about all the stuff that happens. With Joe, there's really nothing to joke about. Because my only memories... I remember specifically 1989, when Bengals went to the Super Bowl. I remember, having a Super Bowl party. That's maybe the only good memory I have. And I'm wondering now if my memory loss from some of those early years isn't because of what I'm about to talk about. Like I said, he was not a very nice man. He would regularly beat me. Well, I don't know how regular it was. It seems like it, but... without anybody knowing. And one night he was drunk and got mad and hit me in the head with a broom handle. And my mom seen it, and that was the last time they were together. I don't think she knew what was going on with Joe before or anything, because that happened and she literally picked me up in my arms, or in my own arms. I can't talk. Picked me up in her arms with my brother Josh and carried me to the because we lived in a trailer park somewhere in Kentucky. I don't even remember where, but carried me there to the landlord's office. I think the landlord lived there or something, and I don't know if they were friends or just knew each other. But anyway, you could go. She went to his house at night, and he called the ambulance. And after that, we were living with Granny. That was not a fun time, and I didn't really want to talk about a lot of that on the podcast. The only reason I'm bringing it up because I just recorded a video about abusers of all kind and just not very nice people in the wrestling business. By the time this comes out, it probably won't even be out. I've still got to do a lot of editing. I've got screenshots for a lot of this stuff. I've got over 50 screenshots that I'm putting in the video. The only problem is I discovered when I put them on there, the words blur. So what I've got to do is take each picture individually, blow it up more, screenshot that and save it, just so that way the screenshots can be read. So anyway, it's a long process, so that video probably won't be out by the time you see this, but when it does come out, I just want everybody to know it's not entertainment, it's not a funny video, it's not personal memories, it's stuff that needs to get out that people need to know about some people. A lot of it's already out, but it's just being ignored. These people are still getting booked to wrestle. I don't want to talk too much about it on here. This is supposed to be a fun podcast. Just a little bit about that. If you do see it, even if you don't watch it and it don't interest you, share it. Somebody might be able to get help from this, or might alert people of their area. This ranges from people from here to Tennessee to North Carolina, Ohio, Indiana, all around that area. So, like I said, just a little bit about that. Some more memories that are actually nice. I remember visiting my dad during this time. Like, we lived at my granny's. The stuff with Joe was a few years prior. I just wanted to kind of, because I'll never really talk about that again, I don't think. But visiting my dad was fun at this time, because this is some of the times I remember from what, because when I got with Marky Foe, my dad came over a couple times on the bus to watch me. And then after that, he wouldn't let him come back over. So I really kind of got robbed of seeing my dad. Plus, and he ended up moving to Indiana after that. So for 5 or so years until 1999, I didn't get to see my dad again. But during this time, I got regular. I don't remember if it was every weekend or every other weekend, whatever the workout was. The workout. But I would go visit him, and still lived on. At this time, he still lived there on Warsaw Avenue, the flower shop, above the flower shop. But I remember just down the road, there was Pete's. It was one of those local restaurants, and I'd always get the grilled cheese with the pickles with roads on it, as I called it. Because the pickles with ridges or grooves, or however you want to call it, crinkle cut. I call them pickle with roads. So I want to go to Pete's. I want pickles with roads on it. And we'd go to the laundromat next door, and my dad would buy me those little, if you guys remember those little NFL helmets you get out of the quarter machines that are like worth a lot now. My dad would get me one of those all the time. I just like so many memories like that. And across the street was, my wife didn't believe me when I called it this, but it's actually in the news recently. Big Lots is going out of business, although a few hundred of the stores I think have been saved. But my dad always called it Odd Lots because it used to be called Odd Lots. My wife thought I was making it up. But yeah, it was called Odd Lots because originally they just sold, just like now, they sold a bunch of different, odd stuff. It was really kind of ahead of its time. It was kind of like the Walmart of now. Of course, now they've got, more expensive stuff at Big Lots, like whole beds and stuff. But yeah, it was called Odd Lots. And just little things I remember, like I remember he bought this shampoo. Like, he always used this shampoo. It was like green apple smelling. And that's the first time I'd ever had I don't know. I guess my mom just had regular shampoo. I don't know what kind it was, but I remember it smelled so good. No, I didn't try to eat the green apple shampoo, but it smelled so good, and I just loved the way I smelled after I took a bath in it. But just funny little memories you think about. I may revisit this time again and talk about something else that pops into my head later on, but it's funny, some of the memories you remember and some of the ones you don't. Maybe someday I'll remember something completely out of the blue that I hadn't thought about in 30 years. But right now, we're going to go to one of my favorite things, the Sunday Nickelodeon lineup. Sometimes I'll do a Nickelodeon lineup, sometimes I'll do Saturday morning cartoons. This week, we're going to go back to Sunday, July of 1991, and I haven't looked at this list yet. It's the Sunday Nickelodeon lineup, and usually during this time, I do the TGIF lineup too, but they were in the summer, so it was all reruns. When I do TV ones, I know if I'm doing a summer month on the podcast, I'm like, well, I'm not going to have much to talk about TV. But anyway, Nickelodeon started at 6 with Lassie. They always seem to be Lassie on early in the morning. It's a great way to start with a nice, wholesome TV show that kids love about dogs. Everybody knows that classic show from the 60s. 6:30, Spartacus and the Sun Beneath the Sea. I've never heard of that. I have no idea what it is. It was a cartoon or what? At 7 a.m., Eureka's Castle. I was joking with my daughter. I was like, because her baby was just born like 9 days ago. It's like, I'm gonna show him Eureka's Castle, and she's instantly like, no. She hated that show. My other kid, Kaylee, or Mars, I should say, loved the show, but Ari could not stand it. She felt like, how could you watch this lame crap? It's like, we loved Eureka's Castle. Shut up. Anyway, 7:30, Kids Court. Like I said before, I've never seen that, but it's probably like the People's Court for kids. Count Duckula, never seen that one. 8:30, Heathcliff, one of my favorite cartoons of all time. Heathcliff the cat. And then 9 a.m. Cartoon Kablooey. If you hear the copyrighted Harry Potter music in the background, that's going to get me kicked off YouTube. My wife's trying to watch Harry Potter to ring in the new year. Aren't you?
No.
Should put on Forrest Gump to celebrate with Lieutenant Dan. But Cartoon Kablooey was one of those with a bunch of different cartoon shorts. Flipper was on at 9:30, and then sometimes it would be, instead of Flipper, it'd be Inspector Gadget. It's kind of a difference there. We got Flipper, the show about the dolphin, and then we got the idiot detective and Inspector Gadget. But then we had Nickelodeon's Most Wanted, Yogi Bear. I've talked a little bit about that before. I don't remember that version, Nickelodeon's Most Wanted. I don't know if it was just Yogi Bear and they just put the Nickelodeon logo on it. Then more Cartoon Kablooey, and then Salute Your Shorts, which actually begun its... the show began in July of this year, 1991. So this was when Salute Your Shorts was brand new. It was a funny show about kids at a camp, and the camp bully, the camp morons, the camp, the popular ones, the not so popular ones, and just I never got to go to any kind of summer camp or anything like that, but this show had me wanting to go. Wild and Crazy Kids would come on at noon. Great game show. Clarissa Explains It All. One of those great shows on Nickelodeon, where it's a girl talking to a camera and she's trying to explain it all to you. Even as boys, we watched the show. It was so hilarious. Hated her brother Ferguson. Ugh. 15. I don't think I've heard of that or seen it. We're Welcome Freshmen. I've heard of it, but never watched that one. Same with Special Delivery. I've never watched that. Then at 4, You Can't Do That on Television. One of those shows that Nickelodeon started with. It was a Canadian show, just like a sketch comedy. It was all that on Nickelodeon before all that. But it's where the Nickelodeon slime came from. Make the Grade. Never seen that one. There's a lot of shows on here that I should go back and watch and do like a little mini review for. Anyway, 5 o'clock, Family Double Dare. My favorite. Can't go wrong with Double Dare, especially the Family Double Dare. I always love those the best. 15 again, whatever that was. Wild and Crazy Kids again. Clarissa Explains It All again. And then we got 7 o'clock, Inspector Gadget. 7:30, Looney Tunes on Nickelodeon. And then we sign off with Nick at Night at 8:30. And then, let's see. It says a note here. It says, the extra Cartoon Kablooey would be replaced with season premieres of the first 3 Nicktoons, Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy. So, a month after this was when those 3 iconic Nicktoons started, and that's really what brought Nickelodeon to the next level, and really is the reason they are now, the Nicktoons. I mean, the other stuff on there is great, and I like some of the other stuff even better than the Nicktoons, but the Nicktoons, the Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy really brought Nickelodeon to that next level. So, that's a little bit on that. Let's see, what else we want to talk about? We talk about music. The Billboard, I try to give the Billboard Hot 100 of the pop music, and I talk about my favorite music, country. But number 1 for 2 weeks was a song called Rush Rush by Paula Abdul. I've never heard of that song in my life. It was 3 weeks number 1 even before that, so it had 5 weeks at number 1, but I've never heard the song. But it's funny, the song was number 1 for 1 week. That was like a one-hit wonder by EMF, whatever that even stands for. Unbelievable. Everybody remembers that song. And then a massive song that was number 1 for the last week in July, and then would go on for 6 more. It'd be total 7 weeks. Is Bryan Adams, Everything I Do It For You. I can't remember. That was from a movie. Can't remember exactly what movie that was from, but that's one of those one of those iconic 90s love songs. American Country Countdown, Alan Jackson, Don't Rock the Jukebox was at number 1 for 3 weeks straight. That was, I think I talked on not the last podcast, but the one before, from 1993 when they had the awards. Alan Jackson's Don't Rock the Jukebox like swept the TNN awards. But then the last week of the month was Ricky Van Shelton, I Am a Simple Man. That was one of his last number ones, where he kind of just faded away, and it's a shame because he had a great voice, and I think he could have kept going. But an album that was released this month that was huge and started a huge career was Trisha Yearwood's debut album. Of course, her debut song went to number 1. That was one of those legendary songs. She's in Love with the Boy. Everybody knows that song. Even if you don't like country, you know that song. But some other songs on there was The Woman Before Me was a big hit. Like We Never Had a Broken Heart. It wasn't a huge hit, but it had Garth Brooks singing background, which is, of course, you know how their story ended up. They ended up getting married in, I think, 2005 or something. Yeah, but they were demo singers and friends before, and and she also did a version of one of Garth Brooks' song, Victim of the Game, which was on his No Fences album, which was actually out at this time. This was a couple months before his Rope in the Wind, his third album came out, and like Garth Brooks became iconic with that. But just a little bit of music there. We're going to move on to some sports. Of course, being July, we're right in the middle of baseball season. The best teams in the National League at the time were the Pirates and the Dodgers. My Reds were in third place in the NL West, just one game below 500, but of course we didn't make the playoffs. The American League, it was the Blue Jays and the Twins, and the Twins ended up winning the World Series that year. But the month of July, the All-Star Game, that was held on July 9th in Toronto at the Sky Dome, at the home of the Blue Jays. The American League won that one 4-2. Cal Ripken Jr., legend, of course, was the MVP. Reds players in the All-Star Game were Chris Sabo. He was my favorite player when I played T-ball in kindergarten. I have a baseball card from that time. He's listed on the back. Favorite player, Chris Sabo. He was memorable for wearing the goggles, the glasses. Tom Browning, Rob Dibble also made the All-Star Game, and Paul O'Neill made the reserves. But not Tom Browning, but Rob Dibble, during this month, later on, he would go and get suspended, I guess, for throwing at somebody. He'd have a 3-game suspension, come back, in his first game back, throws at a base runner. Not even a hitter, a base runner. He throws the ball at him and gets ejected. He was one of the ones that were with the Nasty Boys from that 1990 year we went wire to wire and won the World Series. So he lived up to his name. But of course, the All-Star Game, they also have the Home Run Derby. Cal Ripken Jr. won that. But Chris Sabo and Paul O'Neill also were in the Home Run Derby. A couple other... That was the first year they expanded the Home Run Derby to 3 rounds. Of course, if you don't know the history, Home Run Derby was originally a TV show from the 60s. They would have like 9 innings, and each, it'd be more like a game, but they'd have like stars, and it'd be a whole TV presentation. But the Home Run Derby is completely different now, and it's a huge deal at the All-Star Game. It's usually held the day before on Monday. But also, huge news in baseball, the MLB approved the Colorado Rockies and the Florida Marlins as expansion teams to start in 1993. They'd already decided they were going to have expand the league, but those 2 teams got accepted. Because the Rays for Tampa Bay weren't a team yet, so that was Florida's first team. And, of course, Colorado, there wasn't a team anywhere near Colorado, so, they try to find areas of the country that aren't served, They're still today, I think they could expand more. They don't have anything in Oklahoma, that Kansas, well, they have Kansas City, but that Oklahoma area, there's a lot of expansion they can do. But one final baseball news of note, Dennis Martinez of the Baltimore Orioles threw baseball's 13th perfect game. Of course, if you don't know, the perfect game is if you're a pitcher, you there's 27 batters you face in a game if you face the minimum, because there's 9 innings, and he got all 27 of them out in a row, no walks, no hit batters, nobody reached base, just literally a perfect game. One of those, no hitters are bigs, but not as big as the perfect game, obviously. And this was the 13th in history. And then NASCAR, they ran their summer race at Daytona, the Pepsi 400. Bill Elliott won that. Rusty Wallace won the Miller Genuine Draft 500 at Pocono. Of course, that was his sponsors, so I'm sure they were extra happy. And then Dale Earnhardt won the Die Hard 500 at Talladega, one of their big races at Talladega. And, of course, Dale Earnhardt won his 5th championship that year, too. So, big year for number 3. And then some news of note, not some good things going on here. Jeffrey Dahmer confessed to killing 17 men in 1978. And, of course, it seems like people make him, like, overly famous and kind of, like, obsess over him in the wrong way. Like, he should be someone that's, like, hated, but he's almost glorified, it seems. Like, I hate that. Like, serial killers getting that kind of attention. I get people that are, like, obsessed with, like, because I watch the court TV all the time. I watch trials and stuff. I seen one of Charles Manson's parole hearings, and he was insane. But I don't worship Charles Manson. There's people that literally worship Charles Manson. But that's another story. But I think sometimes the serial killers, the killers themselves and the crimes get glorified when it should be, people just, interested in it, not like, almost like talk about them in reverence or something. But one person that used to be glorified that really had a hit on his reputation was Pee Wee Herman, arrested for exposing himself in an adult movie theater. I have 2 thoughts on this. One, that's a weird person to get arrested for that. And I'm surprised, no, they didn't have any, kid charges or anything because it's Pee Wee Herman. But, he was never caught up in any of those scandals that I know of. But my second thought is if the theater is showing those kind of movies, I don't know. Why would you go in there to watch them? And, if the whole point of those movies is to get you to do something, I'm not going to mention, but it's kind of like going into a restaurant and getting arrested for eating the food. Anyway, moving on quickly from that. TV Guide publishes its 2000th TV Guide, and, of course, probably nobody remembers it these days, but TV Guide back then, when they had a reasonable amount of channels where they wouldn't take up 10 pages just to show an hour's worth of TV that it would today. But back then, getting on the TV Guide was a huge, the cover was a huge deal, and they'd have, the week's worth of TV that was going to be in there and a little synopsis for it and some articles. But TV Guide used to be a huge deal, and they had put out their 2000th edition in July. And then a sad note, Michael Landon, of course, famous for Little House on the Prairie, Highway to Heaven, and of course, as I know him best from, I was a teenage, was it werewolf, I think? Yeah, when he was literally a teenager back in the 50s or 60s, I can't remember. That's what I know him from. Anyway, he died on July 1st from pancreatic cancer. Gone way too soon, but certainly a great actor. Also, how could I forget Little Joe on Bonanza? Marky Foe would have killed me for not remembering that one. But we're going to end up here on the movies. Some movies that came out. Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I seen this, I think, maybe once. I'm not a huge Terminator fan. I think I may have seen this once, and maybe the original one. Didn't go out of my way to see them. They were just on. Didn't really interest me. But, I mean, there's a lot of people. That's a huge movie, so I didn't want to leave it off the list. Problem Child 2. Love this one, but ain't seen it in years, or the original one. That freaking redheaded monster kid. He was I swear they cast that kid because it reminded people of Chucky. I swear, but that kid, I can't remember what his name was. He was a good actor. He had you hating that little brat. And then another one that it didn't really come out in theaters, not a movie, but the Barney in concert tape. The one that kept trying to hawk on PBS, where they would show the Barney live in concert special, and they'd break in every 5 minutes, like you can own this and call now and you get the Barney doll and the tape, and for this amount. I remember that being on so much. But the Barney in concert, that was a huge deal when he went on tour. Sort of like the Turtles, although Barney was more popular with that. The Turtles in concert really didn't get as much attention as it should have. That show was great. But I'm one from the 90s that loved Barney. I seen the documentary on it. They tried to make it seem like, because I think the woman who created Barney, I think her son ended up killing somebody. It might have even been accidental or something. But they tried to make it. They didn't if you watch the documentary, they don't really say it was Barney's fault. But they try to imply the popularity caused his mother to abandon him and not pay enough attention, and that's what made him. It's just sensationalism. It's a good documentary on it. There's all those rumors that Barney was arrested for going after kids in the woods. None of that happened. Although I think one of the people that portrayed Barney, like in the costume, he was either a stripper or a male prostitute or something. I can't remember, but like, it's not like he went in there with his Barney costume on going after kids. It was, all that was like way over. But they had everybody believing that like, Barney's gonna follow you to the woods. But anyway, this episode feels like it flew by, which of course I get up and it'll say 3 hours watch. I hope not. I only had an hour and 18 minutes on my memory card when I started. But check out that one, the abuse. I don't even know what I'm calling that. It's not a podcast. It's just a video. Check it out if you want. If not, share it. Maybe it'll help somebody. The next episode will be out on our normal day of Wednesday the following week, and it's going to be November 1993. We're going ahead just a couple years here. I was 9 years old and in the 4th grade. Marky Faux Land. I talked about this time period a little bit, so we'll see what I have to pull out of the old memory bank to talk about. I haven't talked about before, and there's everything going on at the time, so hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, and we'll see you next time. Steers.
Tales from the 90's never die. In our hearts they testify. VCRs and mixtape spins, where every tale begins. Tales from the crypt, marathons, wrestling wars and